welcome back to the Strength Studio Lab. I'm Jen, and today we're talking about how to achieve exceptional team performance. Not just average, not just getting the job done, but that next level, effortless tier of excellence where everything just clicks. I know you can probably hear my maximizer in there, but performance matters deeply to me. And I truly believe you get there the best and the fastest by leveraging strengths. Not just having an awareness of strengths, but actually activating collective strengths towards common goals. So today, we're going to explore how to design a synergy matrix and build your strengths-based visibility board to help you accelerate performance in whatever space that matters to you. And before we dive right in, I want to share a quick story because interestingly, this episode actually emerged because of a massive school project that my son was assigned in his summer Spanish class. This project required us to operate as a team on a fast timeline around a shared goal. Sounds familiar, right? We do this all the time in the workplace. Anyway, this project was to research and cook an authentic Hispanic meal and then conduct a video presentation of the activity, the approach, and the learnings, as well as to connect it all back to the week's focus on family and culture. Now, my son has about the same love of the kitchen that I have, so you can imagine his joy, insert my sarcasm sign, when we looked at the chosen recipe that indicated it would take a full 3 hours to complete. So with his strategic relator in full swing, we decided to make this a team event and tap into our collective strengths. For us, the goal was learning after all, right? It did not say it couldn't be a family affair. So anyway, we took 5 minutes, we strategically assigned everyone a role based on their strengths and what they do best in relation to the goal of completing this project. So obviously my son was the lead since this was his project. His strategic and futuristic and responsibility themes mapped out the plan, shared the vision, took absolute ownership of the actual cooking of the dish, doing the work, and bringing it all together. My daughter stepped in. She served as the sous chef, with her developer and arranger and positivity themes in full service. She handled the dicing, the cutting, the preparing of spices for him with total accuracy and delight. Her little quips actually kept things very, very light and fun throughout the whole process. And then my spouse, he served as the photographer, since precise, solid pictures would definitely be needed for the final presentation. There was no one better than him with his responsibility and maximizer, which of course owned it and delivered next level results. And then for me, my achiever theme kicked in. As the only one in my household who has achiever, I tend to set the pace around here. So I followed his task list, I read off the steps of the recipe, and kept the momentum going toward the finish line. What was neat was we were all operating in our places of flow. And at one point, I literally paused the group and chuckled, telling them, this is so podcast material. So anyway, I digress, but it was more than just a funny moment. It was another realization that when we operate in this way, leaning on one another, not to compensate for what we don't have, but to strengthen what we do have, it leads to vastly better outcomes in a shorter amount of time. And it's not just for the workplace. This is just a way of operating when we know our strengths, the strengths of the people around us, and we actually activate those strengths around common goals. We all thrive, rise together, and elevate performance. So now I do recognize this was just a school project in a home kitchen, but I am a big believer that families operate as teams. My family has been my living strengths lab for more than a decade, and I find when it works at home, it can absolutely translate and work in the workplace. So that's why today I want to talk to you about how do you build a synergy matrix and map out your strengths-based visibility board. If you're an individual, you can do this on your own and think about who are your key partners that amplify your strengths and work with you frequently to achieve your common goals. If you're a team leader or even a team member, this is a really valuable way to think about teams, knowing each person's role, how they contribute, and the shared work that you do together. It helps move beyond just that simple strengths awareness and into shared action and results. As always, you can download the handout for the episode from my website, www.strengthstudio.com, and then navigate to that lab tab and you should find it there. So as we step into this, let's actually start here. Most people approach partnerships either with no intention or maybe through a reactive lens where they think, oh, I'm terrible at spreadsheets, so let me find a spreadsheet person, or I hate public speaking, so let me hire someone to do that. That's really more like gap filling. It's defensive, but honestly, it's kind of a waste of brilliant potential, right? True strengths-based partnership doesn't start by looking outward for a rescuer. It actually starts with that uncompromising awareness of knowing yourself and your own blueprint first. So to help you think about this, how you serve as a partner to others, you'll see that I have 3 questions for you to consider. The first one is, and probably one we've seen before, who are you at your best? Think about this like, what energy or perspective do you naturally bring into a room or a group or onto a team? Think about your dominant strengths and domains. For me, I'm dominant in strategic thinking and high in influencing, so I am often my best when I can deliver strategic impact. However, think back to the cooking example I had given you. I had to think about my contribution differently based on what the goal required of me. And this is important because you can think about this, how you're at your best generally, but you can also think beyond that first instinct because sometimes we're called upon for our next level of contributions. Essentially, your contribution might change depending on the room you're in. Like me with the cooking, I dialed into my achiever because that's what the moment required. So that brings me to the second question. And it's important to know this. What is your contribution? What is your highest and best use? Where do you deliver a net positive, high impact return on investment? I like to think about this using my dominant domains and my various themes within my top 10. Look at them in different ways, pair them up. Think about experiences where you delivered excellence that felt fueled. Those are likely your contribution points. And just as I mentioned moments ago, think about this in relation to different people and different goals. For me, my own strengths and dominant domains are often leveraged differently depending on the room I'm in or who I'm paired with. For example, when I work with my business partner, she has the influencing domain completely covered. 6 of her top 10 themes are in influence. She's a powerhouse in that zone. This allows me to lean back and focus more on my strategic thinking space and how I contribute there. But at home, strategic thinking, it's already significantly covered, which allows me to shift more into my influencing zone, leveraging my dominant themes of maximizer and self-assurance and pulling up some of my supporters of command and activator. So this isn't just knowing where you are at your best and what you contribute. This is where that third question that you'll see on the worksheet is critical. Awareness of what you need, that's key. This is the one that people often miss or don't spend enough time thinking about. So I do want you to consider, what are those approaches, the environments, or the support systems you must have in place to really thrive? For me, my strategic thinking themes, they need time to ideate, to learn, to map possibilities. My achiever needs to close loops, move at a clip, and pause to celebrate. My influencing themes need that quick momentum and the ability to take things to the next level. And then there's my relator that really needs to connect deeply with others. So I encourage you, those are some quick examples, but really spend some time on this, because when we don't know what we need, we will likely over leverage our strengths and maybe unintentionally drain the people around us in the process. So consider those three questions. Consider your lens. Think about the value that you bring, the contributions that you bring in different places and spaces and with different people. And what do you really need to sustain that success? And that helps you then become more open and aware to sensing what others bring, what they need. And then you can actually give those things so that you know where you can pair up and accelerate performance most easily. So that moves us into part 2, actually building your strengths-based visibility board. So once you've kind of anchored in your own strengths, it's time to look at, what's my ecosystem? So I want you to actually picture a board in your mind or grab that handout from the website and sketch this out, because we are going to map our key partners across the 4 domains of strength. You can think about this generally, or if you have a specific project coming up, it's a great way to actually leverage this tool. And don't think about people in terms of titles or org charts. Think about the people around you. Think about them in terms of their distinction and their unique impact. So first, let's consider the executing domain. You can use the purple box for this. The colors on the worksheet correlate to those domain colors. So ask yourself, who in your ecosystem is the absolute best at making things happen, getting things done? When an idea is floating in the ether, who grabs it, locks it down, and turns it into reality? Those exceptionally talented in executing, they tend to bring that momentum, that precision, that ownership, that focus and structure, or completion of getting those tasks and goals across the finish line. And I'll say this, I know there are a lot of executors out there. So even if you were thinking, well, I'm the best in this domain, I actually to encourage you to think about, what is something complementary that someone else brings to this space? For me, my achiever, it's a powerhouse. So I really look at my executing partners very specifically. And one of the people that I lean into is my spouse, because his demonstrated strength and responsibility carries a really strong ethical lens. I find his ethics are deeper and stronger than anyone else I know. So I look to him for this lens, as it is an impactful distinction that he contributes to a room. So it's not just thinking about what these individuals bring, but it's also figuring out and asking, what do they need? Because we want to be mindful of sustained success. See, I have trouble with those 2 words together. Sustained success, and not over leveraging others. And with the executing domain, That can be easy to do. So be careful here. Do not over leverage the executors as the dumping ground for work, even when they say, oh, give me more, I can take on more. Think about where they distinctly contribute, as well as what they might need from you. Maybe it's things like clarity or milestones or pausing or celebrating success or respect for their time. This helps you honor their execution and keep it sustainable rather than potentially exploiting it unintentionally. So you'll notice that there's also space on that worksheet for something called a sustainability factor. This is where you think about what they need, what you need, and you determine, how do we keep this partnership healthy? What is the sustainability factor that we need to ensure we don't over leverage or overutilize one another's strengths? It's all about that balance so both parties can feel fueled. So now let's keep going and look at the influencing domain. For this one, ask yourself, who is the very best at activating this vision? Who can take a concept, wrap words around it, and get people emotionally bought in? Who leads the momentum? Who can tell the story so that people actually listen? Those high in influencing tend to bring that energy and advocacy and persuasion. What they might need to thrive is a platform, something to measure against, an audience, or a charge to lead forward. So for me, my influencing partner is actually my business partner, Katie. I mentioned previously that 6 of her top 10 are in influencing, but she also holds a secret sauce of individualization in her top 5, which makes her incredibly effective and distinct in being able to tell the story in a way that connects to each individual so that they feel personally connected and ready to move forward to action. For me, I might float an idea to her, and instinctively, she is ready to advocate. She's going to sponsor that idea, move it to action, and rally everyone around it, sometimes before I'm even ready. So this is where we look at those needs and sustainability factors. And I'll tell you, influencing tends to be one of the most underutilized domains in some ways. Often I find that people don't want to toot their own horn, but influencing is more than that. And it's so important because that's what can bring all the other domains to life and expand impact. So think about your partners here. Spend some time. Don't skip over this one. Trust me, the impact of the story being told can yield more benefit than you might imagine. Now, third, let's consider the relationship building domain. Ask yourself, who are your relational connectors? Who holds people together? Who is the person that instantly senses the temperature of the room and keeps the team connected? Who brings that positive, hopeful energy? These individuals tend to bring that empathy, that trust, that connection, the psychological safety. They bring it right into the room, and others might feel better just having them around. But these individuals might need things like time for connection, sharing, perspectives to be heard, not just goals achieved. They tend to recognize that people matter more than numbers. So for me on this one, my daughter, she's my relationship builder, and I leverage her in countless ways because her relational lens is precise and unique. It's just what I need. She brings positivity and developer, but you'll love this. She has it paired with an influencing theme of maximizer. So it's not just all sunshine and roses or toxic positivity. It's positivity with precision. She knows the exact moments to sprinkle hope and optimism and encouragement. And I know for her to be able to sustain the positive vibes, she needs hope. And the sustainability factor here is really ensuring that her hopefulness is not shut down, minimized, or brushed off as naivete in conversations. So these are those kinds of things that you want to think about, right? What do they bring to a room? What needs do they have? How do we keep it sustainable? And know yourself. What can I give? What's the balance? How do we keep it a healthy partnership? And then fourth, let's talk about the final domain, that strategic thinking domain. Ask yourself, who absorbs the data? Who sees around the corner? Who points to the future? Who is the best at asking, what if? These partners are likely those individuals who tend to bring perspective, alternative routes, focus. They might need some space to ponder, or ideate, or analyze. For me on this one, I look for my opposite thinkers. I look to my colleagues and partners who have analytical or context high, and that helps balance my fast moving strategic. And I love running presentations and icebreakers past these individuals and asking them, come on, poke the holes. They give me a lens that I would not think through naturally. And by doing so, they strengthen my work and the outcomes, right? But I also have to be mindful here, right? Because I can get frustrated with too many questions and they might need to ask a lot of questions. So I need to give them space rather than let my strategic lead and assume that they should just understand, catch up, or infer things. For me, that sustainability factor in these partnerships comes down to how do we balance these needs? Hilariously, I always tell my husband, you get 3 questions as our sustainability factor for a successful marriage. So now I will also say, this is where you can step back and think bigger than square by square, right? Don't do this in isolation. Also, take that moment to reflect. For example, when my colleague Katie and I think we've really cooked up the best idea with our strategic thinking and our influencing themes, we actually try to pause ourselves and think about, okay, who can we bring in to vet some of these ideas so that there's a different lens? And honestly, this leads to almost a trifecta of excellence that helps us avoid groupthink by broadening our circle and ultimately getting us to better results. So even if you think you just need one key partner for a project, I really encourage you to think across all 4 of the domains for your best results. And you can do this with all of these. If your partnership ever feels a bit too magical, bring in those other lenses to help you bring balance and explore those different perspectives. So now, after you have stepped back, look at your map, identified those key partners, here's where the real magic happens, and here's where you move to collective excellence. And I want to call this out because it really is key. And I know I've mentioned it before, but it's so important that I want to say it again. Once you've named all these people on your board, you don't just pair them up for the areas that you struggle. I get managing weakness is practical, but pairing up on areas of strength, that is where exponential growth lives. So I have some reflection questions for you at the bottom of your worksheet so that you can step back and do a little broader reflection. Think about, when working with these key partners, how do we pair our strengths for excellence to achieve exceptional results and collective success? This is that thinking of where we're both feeling fueled. And I find that when people pair up who are operating from their respective zones of, let's call it brilliance, it really creates this strengths-based chemical reaction, so to speak, that looks like magic. Think about it. When a strategic thinker is pairing with an influencer, that strategy becomes a movement. Or an executor pairing with a relationship builder. The project gets done, but even better, the team comes out stronger, more aligned, and feeling better supported than ever. So think about this carefully for each of your partners. Who do you pair up with to achieve excellence, not just offset. This is about recognizing the unique value you bring and identifying the complementary value that others bring so that goals are achieved flawlessly and both parties are feeling fueled in the process. And remember, in this fast moving world, pausing to have those needs conversations are important because a partnership that is sustainable can avoid strengths fatigue if both parties understand, value, and respect one another's contributions and needs and build those sustainability factors in from the start. So you'll notice a second question there, and this is one that's worth reflecting on as well. And that question is, who might be missing from your board? Who might you be overlooking? Who in your network has massive capacity to contribute, but maybe they're boxed into a role or job description? So think about who haven't you considered yet and reflect on if maybe there's a spot for them on your board or for you on theirs. And then finally, as we close, this is an important component because sometimes we develop these things and then they sit on paper. So I encourage you, activate your board. It's not enough to just fill out the form and reflect. I want you to actually activate and leverage your matrix. Identify what project you have coming up, who you can partner with, what domains or themes you will leverage of yours and theirs, what you both need, and how you will keep that partnership sustainable so that you don't fall into overuse. And then watch how quickly exceptional performance emerges. So, as you launch your next project, whether it's a new initiative, a team project, or even something with your family, lean into your visibility board and activate it. Strengths truly become stronger when we work towards common goals, shared outcomes, and collective success. It is much faster and more productive to build excellence in from the beginning than to untangle it and struggle later on. So have fun, test this approach, see what works, tweak it, modify it to fit your needs. And truly, I thank you for tuning in today. I look forward to seeing you next week in the lab. Thanks.